Hi there. Adjectives and adverbs are great for adding details to your story. But what if you want to talk about how one person, thing, or idea compares to another one? This is where the comparative structure comes into play. We use comparatives to provide richer details and more context to the listener or reader. Welcome to the English Academy. In this Adjective Adventure Part 3, we are going to discuss comparatives and superlative adjectives. You likely already know that adjectives and adverbs modify nouns and verbs respectively, and it is possible for making comparative sentences by using adjectives and adverbs by using as, or not as. For example, he is as brilliant as his brother. This math problem is not as difficult as I thought. But in this lesson, we focus on making comparisons by using comparatives and superlative adjectives. Comparatives and superlatives for short. A comparative is used to compare two nouns or objects. Words like smaller, higher, lower, shorter, longer. Most of the comparatives ends in er or er. The word than is used in comparative degree. A superlative is used to compare three or more objects that are of upper or lower limits of the words, the highest, the lowest, the shortest, the longest, the smallest. Article the is used before the superlatives. Now you understand the comparatives and superlatives. Let's look at a few important rules when making comparisons. Let's start by learning how to form the comparative sentences. They follow this pattern: subject plus verb plus comparative adjectives plus than plus object. Here, subject and object might be noun. In comparative sentences, we use than after the comparative adjectives. The writing of a superlative adjective is bit different. The pattern is subject plus verb plus the plus superlative adjectives plus object. Here we omit the than and we place the article the before superlative adjectives. Like Rani is the shortest in the class, our house is the smallest in this colony. Now we look into forming regular comparatives and superlatives. It's fairly easy. Here are some rules. Let's go through these rules. For one syllable adjectives, we add er in comparatives and est in the superlatives. Like large, larger, the largest; small, smaller, the smallest; old, older, the oldest. An example: it was the largest house we had ever seen. Some adjectives follow consonant plus single vowel plus consonant. In this pattern, we double the final consonant and we add er to comparatives and est in the superlatives. Like big, bigger, the biggest; sad, sadder, the saddest; fat, fatter, the fattest. An example here: your cat is much fatter than last time. Now let's talk about most two-syllable adjectives. Most two-syllable adjectives will add more or less in before comparisons and the most or least before superlatives. The words like beautiful. In comparisons, we say more or less beautiful, and in superlatives, the most or the least beautiful. Thoughtful, more or less thoughtful, the most or least thoughtful. Pleasant, more or less pleasant, the most or least pleasant. An example here. I have the most thoughtful friends in my circle. What about two-syllable adjectives which ends in Y? Yes. If two-syllable adjectives ends in Y, replace Y and place I and add er in a comparatives and add est in superlative forms. The words like happy, happier, the happiest, hungry, hungrier, the hungriest. An example here. Nobody is happier than Mukesh after winning the award. We have other two syllable adjectives. What about the two syllable adjectives ends with or ow, which are treated as regular comparatives? We add er in comparatives and est in the superlatives. The adjectives like sorrow, sorrower, sorrowest, narrow, narrower, the narrowest, poor, poorer, the poorest. An example here, we walked on the narrowest road. Let's look into adverbs here. We have adverbs ending with ly. The adverbs which ends with ly receives more or less in the comparatives and the most or least in the superlatives. Slowly, more or less slowly, the most or least slowly. Lively, more or less lively, the most or least lively. An example here, Mr. Raj is the most lively manager in our office. My brother drives the most slowly in our family. You could also say, my brother drives slowest among all. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Some adjectives are correct in either forms. Let's have some examples here. The words like friendly. We can either say friendly, friendlier, friendliest, or friendly in comparative, more or less friendly, in superlative, the most or least friendly. The same is the case like simple. Simple in comparative, simpler, and the simplest in superlatives, or more or less simple in comparative and the most or the least simple in superlatives. The words like a clever, clever, cleverer, the cleverest, or in comparatives, more or less clever, the most or least clever. An example here, that was the simpler than what I thought, or that was more simple than what I thought. There are, of course, some irregular adjectives. These need to be memorized or comes by practice. For example, good, better, best. Now I remember one tongue twister. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better, the better is the best. Anyways, bad, worse, worst. Little, less, least. Far, further, furthest. Farther, farthest. Far, further, furthest is British English, and far, farther, farthest is American English. Here is an example. This is the best experience I ever had in my life. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to move on quiz. It's on comparatives. Write your answers in a comment section. If your answers are right, your names will be displayed in the next episode. Go for huge shoutouts for last episode's winners. Thank you for watching. Go to description box and click on the video links below. You'll be getting the past lessons. Go through that and subscribe this channel and share these videos to many. It might support their studies. And also follow us on Instagram, teaspokenenglish. Thank you. See you soon.